Okay, so when I say financial crisis, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, right, it's 2008. We picture bankers in expensive suits, complex charts on a screen, a problem that was born and bred on Wall Street. But here's the thing. What if the next big one looks absolutely nothing like that? What if it doesn't even start with a bank?
And that really gets to the heart of this quote right here. The whole game is changing. The very nature of risk is shifting under our feet. You see, the threats aren't just brewing inside the financial house anymore. They're coming from, well, everywhere else. Let's break that down. Think of it like this. On one side, you've got 2008. That was an internal system failure. The system basically broke itself from the inside out. But on the other side, we have the future. And that's about external shocks. This is where the world of finance becomes a casualty, right? A victim of something breaking in technology, or the climate, or even global politics.
All right, so before we dive into these new kind of scary possibilities, I think it helps to have a baseline. To really get where we might be going, we have to remember where we've been. So let's do a super quick refresher on the crisis we all know. And the key takeaway here, the big thing to remember, is that every single one of these causes, the bad mortgages, the opaque products nobody understood, the insane amounts of leverage, it was all homegrown. It was a product of the financial system itself. You could call it a self-inflicted wound. Finance basically created this problem, let it grow, and then boom, unleashed it on the rest of us.
Okay, so that was the old crisis. Now, what about these new external threats? Let's start with the digital world. This is where the very code that runs our lives could become the code that completely breaks our economy. I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine a single key, a universal skeleton key that could open every digital lock on the entire planet, all at once. Well, that's what we're talking about with a quantum shock. It's a sudden, massive breakthrough in quantum computing that would make all the encryption that protects our money, our stocks, our bonds, totally useless, obsolete in an instant. And the fallout from that, it would be immediate. We're not talking about a slow burn. The chain reaction would be instantaneous. And this wouldn't be a crisis of value. It's not that your stocks are suddenly worthless. It would be a crisis of verification. Think about it. If you can't digitally prove you own your assets, do you actually own them? The entire global system, which is built on this fragile foundation of digital trust, would just freeze, dead in its tracks. Now let's talk about AI. And look, this isn't some sci-fi movie about an evil superintelligence taking over. No, the real risk is actually way more subtle, and maybe even weirder. It's this idea of what happens when thousands upon thousands of different trading AIs, all trained on pretty much the same data from the internet, all start to think alike. Right, it's like a rumor spreading in a room full of super fast robots that all think the same way. It's not collusion, nobody planned it. It's just algorithmic groupthink. And the result? A massive coordinated sell-off in seconds, a flash crash. Not because of one bad algorithm, but because thousands of them reached the exact same scary conclusion in the very same millisecond. And this digital fragility isn't just about algorithms. It's about our actual stuff, too. We're moving towards this idea of tokenization, right? Taking real-world assets, like a building, and turning them into digital tokens on a platform. Now, that can be super efficient, for sure, but it also creates a massive new single point of failure. A single bug in one of these widely used platforms could instantly make billions, maybe even trillions, in real-world assets totally illiquid. You own it, but you can't sell it. It's frozen. Okay, let's step out of the digital realm for a minute and into the physical world. Because sometimes the biggest threat to the market isn't a glitchy line of code. Sometimes it's a hurricane, or a drought, or just a massive shift in our physical environment. So check out this scenario. Let's call it the climate-driven fire sale. Imagine there's a huge breakthrough and suddenly green energy becomes dirt cheap. Now, that's amazing news for the planet, right? But it's catastrophic news for the big oil-producing nations. Their number one source of income could practically vanish overnight. And what would they do to fund their entire economies? They'd be forced to sell off their massive investments, everything.
And when we say massive, the scale is just staggering. We're talking about these huge sovereign wealth funds. These guys are some of the biggest, most predictable buyers on the planet. They own trillions of dollars in stocks, bonds, real estate, you name it. They are, in a very real sense, the bedrock of the market, the ones who provide stability.
So let me ask you, what happens when the world's biggest, most predictable buyers are suddenly forced to become desperate, panicked sellers, all at the same time? Well, You get a fire sale on a planetary scale. The very foundation of the market just cracks, and you could kick off a downward spiral that would make previous crashes look small.
And these physical shocks go way beyond just climate transitions. I mean, think about it. What if a superstorm takes out a few critical data centers in one go? Or a geopolitical flare-up cuts off the world's supply of semiconductors? Or what if a handful of satellites go down, making it impossible to accurately timestamp trades? The point is, our super complex financial system is actually incredibly dependent on a very fragile physical world. And that dependence on global stability brings us to our third and final category of risk. This is where finance isn't just a victim of outside forces, it's where the very tools of finance become weapons in a geopolitical battle. The whole global financial system runs on what you could call shared plumbing, things like the SWIFT payment network that lets money move between countries. But what happens when you weaponize that plumbing, when you cut a major economy out of the system to punish them? Well, it doesn't just hurt the target. You risk shattering the whole network. You force other countries to start building their own parallel systems, and suddenly the world's financial system is broken into pieces. And then you have this new development on the horizon: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Now, the big difference here is that instead of your money being in an account at a commercial bank, it's held in a direct account with the central bank, the government. In a moment of panic, this creates a terrifying new possibility: a digital bank run, but at the speed of light. Millions of people could pull their money out of the entire private banking system with a single tap on their phones. Okay, so we've looked at digital ghosts, real-world shocks, and geopolitical weapons. Let's pull back. What does this all mean? What's the big picture here? Well, it means the old map we used to navigate financial risk is pretty much useless now. Because the common thread, the thing that ties all of these new dangers together, isn't something happening inside Wall Street. It's the opposite. It's finance's growing and frankly fragile dependence on all these complex external systems that it has absolutely no control over. Things like the internet, the physical climate, and the global political order.
So you can really think of it as three new fronts where a crisis could start. On the digital front, the attacks are on our trust in code itself. On the physical front, the vulnerability is our complete reliance on global infrastructure. And on the geopolitical front, the danger is when the very tools that are meant for cooperation get turned into weapons of economic war.
And that leaves us with one last really big question. After 2008, we spent more than a decade building bigger, stronger walls around the banks to stop that from ever happening again. But what if the next great fire isn't going to start inside the banking system? If the threat is coming from the outside, who or what should we be watching now?